Hey crew, it's Pitt and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Mrs. Helena Blavatsky. This is The Secret Doctrine. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but some people seem to find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. A particular note again today almost certainly will be the Infinite Integrations playlist where I detail how to do magic. With that being said, we are going to dive in and really begin. We did the preface yesterday, but for now, this is the first chapter, Volume 1, Page 1, Proem. Let's dive in and see what's up. Pages from a prehistoric period. An archaic manuscript, a collection of palm leaves made impermeable to water, fire, and air by some specific unknown process, is before the writer's eye. On the first page is an immaculate white disc within a dull black ground. On the following page, the same disc, but with a central point. The first, the student knows to represent cosmos in eternity before the reawakening of still slumbering energy, the emanation of the word in later systems. The point in the hitherto immaculate disc, space and eternity in pralaya, denotes the dawn of differentiation. It is the point in the mundane egg, see Part 2, the mundane egg, the germ within the latter which will become the universe, the all, the boundless periodical cosmos, this germ being latent and active, periodically and by turns. The one circle is divine unity, from which all proceeds and whither all returns. Its circumference, a forcibly limited symbol, in view of the limitation of the human mind, indicates the abstract, ever incognizable presence, and its plane, the universal soul, although the two are one. Only the face of the disc, being white and the ground all around black, shows clearly that its plane is the only knowledge, dim and hazy though it still is, that is attainable by man. It is on this plane that the manvantaric manifestations begin, for it is within this soul that slumbers, during the pralaya, the divine thought, wherein lies concealed the plan of every future cosmogony and theogony. Now there is a footnote on divine thought. It is hardly necessary to remind the reader, once more, that the term divine thought, like that of universal mind, must not be regarded as even vaguely shadowing forth an intellectual process akin to that exhibited by man. The unconscious, according to von Hartmann, arrived at the vast creative, or rather evolutionary plan, by a clairvoyant wisdom superior to all consciousness, which in the Vedantic language would mean absolute wisdom. Only those who realize how far intuition soars above the tardy processes of ratiocinative thought can form the faintest conception of that absolute wisdom which transcends the ideas of time and space. Mind, as we know it, is resolvable into states of consciousness of varying duration, intensity, complexity, etc., all in the ultimate resting on sensation, which is, again, Maya. Sensation, again, necessarily postulates limitation. The personal God of Orthodox theism perceives, thinks, and is affected by emotion. He repents and feels fierce anger. But the notion of such mental states clearly involves the unthinkable postulate of the externality of the exciting stimuli, to say nothing of the impossibility of ascribing changelessness to a being whose emotions fluctuate with events in the world he presides over. The conceptions of a personal God as changeless and infinite are thus unpsychological and, what is worse, unphilosophical. Now, I'm going to go ahead and break with what most people think here, and I'm going to say that this is completely irrelevant. Not necessarily that you should not think about these things, but it's not necessarily something to dwell upon. It does not matter if your soul is reflected in another soul that is hovering around your body, which is what most of her beliefs have been so far, as evidenced by Isis Unveiled. That there is an ethereal realm where your soul really resides, and that you being here in the 5D is an illusion, right? The Maya. I don't necessarily hold to that. I do not believe that this reality that we are existing in is as mutable as it is intimidated by Maya, right? I believe that we are here corporeally and it is real. There are simulation theories, and honestly, it doesn't matter. If it is a simulation, we have rules to play by the simulation by. We have to abide by those rules, and we have to operate within the bounds which we are constrained by. Whether or not those rules are real according to the eternal. They have been set in place for us to incorporate and to do things here. And our focus mainly should be here. It should not be on attaining Maya or becoming part of that. We are to strive to be the best that we can be. We are to strive to overcome our challenges. We are to strive to accomplish great works in the name of the One. All of that is true. But it is not for the reward of an eternal life that is separate from damnation, because damnation is not really a thing in my beliefs, right? I do not believe that you go to hell. There may be some type of a punishment for not following through, but I do not believe that that is the driving force for the incorporation. We are here to be the best version of ourselves that we possibly can be, and we get that through the revelations that are brought to us by contemplating these things. But the contemplation of these things should not be all-consuming. You will not know for sure until you are no longer incorporated. And therefore, there is no reason to invest an excessive amount of energy into investigating those things. Now, separate from that, I've had a divine experience where I was pulled out of my body and given the overview of the creation of the universe. I saw it happen in not real time, because that would have taken a long time, right? But I was given the condensed version. I got to see things happen. Again, that is outside of myself, because I have aphantasia and I cannot imagine that I did see it when I didn't. That is a little bit too much for other people, but it gives me a certainty that most people don't have. I got to see the interconnectedness of all things. I got to see that the Holy Spirit actually is everything in existence. That is not only me and you, but the space between me and you, and the space between me and you. It is literally every atom in existence and all of the space between those atoms. When you have the electrons circling the nucleus of an atom, it is the space between the nucleus and the electron, and it is the space between that individual atom and the atoms around it. It is literally all of creation, all at the same time. Therefore, there is no incorporation inside of itself in fullness, right? You cannot get God incarnated here fully. That would break things, in my estimation. But again, that is something that is not important in the long run of things. You are meant to overcome here. You are meant to embrace your life here. You are meant to do things here, not necessarily for the future promised rewards of the soul's eternal return, right? I believe that return is going to happen regardless of whether you do it correctly or not. And whether there is a punishment for things is something we will find out there, but it is not the underlying pennies. There is no hell. There is no soul going to burn forever. And so many of the things that will be discussed in this, to me, are going to be irrelevant. Right? This is a great thought exercise. Where did the universe come from? How did it come into existence? Right? And you can give a visualization of that, which is what they are attempting to do with the circle, and then inside of the circle, a dot. Right? That is not unuseful, but it is, again, not something that you need to dwell on excessively. It does not matter in the long run of things, in my opinion. You may need that. Some people need to be washed in the blood. Some people need to have 12 pillars to uphold. Some people need professions of faith in specific ways in order to do things. That is their training. That is the way that they have been brought up. It is not the soul's natural state, but you have decided that those are the rules by which you must play. And so, because you have decided upon those rules, you must enact within those rules. It is a level of responsibility type of situation. If you are unaware of what a level of responsibility is, you should fall back to the Infinite Integrations playlist, where that is discussed in much more full detail, but it is basically, you are responsible for the level of knowledge which you have. If you know that something is wrong and you do it anyway, you are responsible for that. If you know how to do something and you either do it without intention or without, by intention I mean to intentionally do it, right? To invest the energy specifically for it, but you do it inadvertently, that has consequences, whether or not you intended those to do. If you know what the consequences would be, you are responsible for the level of knowledge that you have, not for any knowledge that you do not have. That cup which you use will be used. All right, back to the text. It is the one life, eternal, invisible, yet omnipresent, without beginning or end, yet periodical in its regular manifestations, between which periods reigns the dark mystery of non-being. And again, this is something that is irrelevant. It does not matter if at some point the entirety of the universe goes inert, which is what is being intimated here, right? You have a cycle of being and non-being. We're here during the being part. It does not matter to us about the non-being part. If it should happen that the entirety of the universe would unravel in 15 minutes, it does you no good to know that it's coming, right? All that's going to do is cause you anxiety. That is investigating the wrong parts of things, right? That is being more concerned with the after than the current, and that is not correct. That doesn't mean that you can't get there that way, but it does mean that that is not the correct way to get there. You can take many roads to get to one spot, but one of them is going to be the most efficient. The rest of them are going to be scenic. Unconscious, yet absolute consciousness. Unrealizable, yet the one self-existing reality. Truly, a chaos to the sense, a cosmos to the reason. Its one absolute attribute, which is itself, eternal ceaseless motion, is called in esoteric parlance the great breath, which is the perpetual motion of the universe in the sense of limitless ever-present space. That is the law of rhythm. That which is motionless cannot be defined, but when there is nothing in fact and reality absolutely motionless within the universal soul. We talked about that in a bit about the spiral of choice. You are either consciously choosing to walk up the spiral of choice, or you are either consciously choosing to walk down it, or inadvertently walking down it. You do not inadvertently walk up the spiral. It takes intention, but you can inadvertently walk down it. You are walking regardless. Which direction it is depends entirely upon you, and if you are walking without intention, you are walking down the spiral of choice. Nothing is motionless. And again, that is one of the laws of creation. That is the law of rhythm. Its one absolute attribute, which is itself eternal, ceaseless motion, is called in esoteric parlance the great breath. Wait. Okay, we did that whole thing. Almost 5 centuries BC, Leucippus, the instructor of Democritus, maintained that space was filled eternally with atoms, actuated by a ceaseless motion, the latter generating in due course of time when those atoms aggregated rotary motion through mutual collisions producing lateral movements. Epicurus and Lucretius taught the same, only adding to the lateral motion of the atoms the idea of affinity, an occult teaching. From the beginning of man's inheritance, from the first appearance of the architects of the globe, he lives in, the unrevealed deity was recognized and considered under its only philosophical aspect, universal motion, the thrill of the creative breath in nature. Occultism sums up the one existence thus: Deity is an arcane, living or moving fire, and the eternal witnesses of this unseen presence are heat, light, heat, and moisture. This trinity, including and being the cause of every phenomena in nature. All right, let's look at that footnote. Nominalists arguing with Berkeley that it is impossible to form the abstract idea of motion distinct from the motion body moving. Principle of Human Knowledge, Introduction, paragraph 10, may put the question, what is that body, the producer of that motion? Is it a substance? Then you are believers in a personal God, etc., etc. This will be answered further on in the addendum to this book. Meanwhile, we claim our rights of conceptualists as against Rossellini's materialistic views of realism and nominalism. Has science, says one of its ablest advocates, Edward Clodd, revealed anything that weakens or opposes itself to ancient words in which the essence of all religion, past, present, and to come, is given? To do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly before thy God? Provided we connote by the word God not the crude anthropomorphism which is still the backbone of our current theology, but the symbolic conception of that which is life and motion of the universe. To know which in physical order is to know time past, present, and to come. In the existence of successions of phenomena, to know which, in the moral, is to know what has been, is, and will be within human consciousness. See Science of Emotions, a discourse delivered at South Place Chapel, Finsbury, London, December 27th of 1885. Intracosmic motion is eternal and ceaseless. Cosmic motion, the visible, or that which is subject to perception, is finite and periodical. As an eternal abstraction, it is in the ever-present. As a manifestation, it is finite, both in the coming direction and the opposite, the two being the alpha and omega of successive reconstructions. Cosmos, the noumenon, has naught to do with the casual relations of the phenomenal world. It is only with reference to the intracosmic soul, the ideal cosmos, and the immutable divine thought, that we may say, it never had a beginning, nor will it have an end. With regard to its body or cosmic organization, though it cannot be said that it had a first or will ever have a last construction, yet at each new manvantara its organization may be regarded as the first and the last of its kind, as it evolutes on every time on a higher plane. A few years ago only it was stated that the esoteric doctrine teaches, like Buddhism and Brahmanism and even the Kabbalah, that the one infinite and unknown essence exists from all eternity, and in regular and harmonious successions is either passive or active. In the poetical phraseology of Manu, these conditions are called the days and nights of Brahma. The latter is either awake or asleep. The Svabhavikas, or philosophers of the oldest school of Buddhism, which still exist in Nepal, speculate only upon the active condition of this essence, which they call Sabhavat, and deem it foolish to theorize upon the abstract and unknowable power in its passive condition. Hence, they are called atheists by both Christian theologians and modern scientists, for neither of the two are able to understand the profound logic of their philosophy. The former will allow of no other God than the personified secondary powers which have worked out the visible universe, and which became with them the anthropomorphic God of the Christians, the male Jehovah, roaring amid thunder and lightning. In its turn, rationalistic science greets the Buddhists and the Svabhavikas as the positivists of the archaic ages. If we take a one-sided view of the philosophy of the latter, our materialists may be right in their own way. The Buddhists maintain that there is no creator, but an infinitude of creative powers, which collectively form one eternal substance, the essence of which is inscrutable. Hence, not a subject for the speculation of any true philosopher. Socrates invariably refused to argue upon the mystery of universal being, yet no one would have ever thought about charging him with atheism, except those who were bent upon his destruction. Upon inaugurating an active period, says the secret doctrine, an expansion of this divine essence from without inwardly and from within outwardly occurs in obedience to eternal and immutable law, and the phenomenal or visible universe is the ultimate result of a long chain of cosmical forces thus progressively set in motion. In like manner, when the passive condition is resumed, a contraction of the divine essence takes place, and the previous work of creation is gradually and progressively undone. The visible universe becomes disintegrated, its material dispersed, and darkness, solitary and alone, broods once more over the face of the deep. To use a metaphor from the secret books, which will convey the idea still more clearly, an outbreathing of the unknown essence produces the world, and an inhalation causes it to disappear. This process has been going on from all eternity, and our present universe is but one of an infinite series, which had no beginning and will have no end. Now, I do agree in part with that, right? The in part being limited to, we will not know. We do not have a complete understanding of human history as it stands right now. There are large sections of our history that have been intentionally destroyed, accidentally lost, and completely forgotten to the annals of time. There are civilizations that have risen and fallen with no written records that we have located. I believe that several of these existed in a prior state of existence of this planet. That doesn't mean that there was a sleep. There may have been, that did not have to be. The changing of the eras does not necessitate the sleep that is being intimated right here, right? The breathing out, giving life, and the breathing in, taking it away. That could be a thing, but again, if that is a thing, when the breathe in happens, we won't be here. But I do believe that we were here for the shifts. I believe that there is a cyclic pattern, 12,000 years with a 6,000 year repeating alternate, right? If you are unfamiliar with that, the 12,000 year disaster cycle is a greater explanation of, but here it is in short. 12,000 years ago, roughly, there was an energetic disruption in the universe. Our planet being affected to the greatest degree that we are aware of. That does not mean that other places were not affected, but we have the greatest awareness of our own, right? The planet, in my estimation, was affected by this by swapping where its rotative center is, right? We now are aligned with the north and south poles, not quite at 0 and 0, it's at like 32, right? And now we're located like this. I believe that 12,000 years ago, we were located like this, which was a 90-degree shift. That means that some places that are cold now were hot then. Some places that were deserts now were jungles then, or plains and savannas. That change we were here for, but most of humanity passed away. There were, in my estimation, civilizations around. This is recorded in Plato. You can go through Timaeus and Critias, where we discuss that in some great detail in the 12,000 year disaster cycle. I believe that 12,000 years ago this change happened and that it was a fiery event. What that means is that there was a great plasmic discharge, think of lightning, but miles wide, maybe even hundreds of miles. And it formed mountain ranges where there were no mountain ranges. It pulled them up from the deep. The turning of the earth makes the isostatic pressures change, and we bulge at the middle due to our rotation. Well, when we turn, that bulge is in a different spot. So places that are above water now are underwater then, and places that were underwater then are above water now. That, to me, is when Atlantis happened, and it is also when Eden happened. The expulsion from Eden was probably this plasmic discharge that did not allow you to go back towards the flaming sword from heaven. In addition to that, I believe that 6,000 years ago was the alternate of that, right? We had the fiery discharge, and then 6,000 years later, we had a flood. I believe that it was a global flood, that it wiped out most of life on earth, but that there was not only one man and his family that was saved. Noah, according to the Bible, was almost certainly taken from the Babylonian myths, almost in its entirety, and just copied, basically. That was what most of the Mosaic books appear to have done. See the Bible study. And so I believe that there was a flood, but that it was taken by the Judaic forces to reinforce their belief that they were the chosen people. I do not believe that God chooses a people. That is a very long explanation of things, but it was to point out that I believe that we were here 12,000 years ago when the fire event happened, and then most people died, but not everyone. I believe that we were here 6,000 years ago when the epoch again changed and most people died, but not everyone. That would be the withdrawing of the breath. That doesn't mean that it was an idle period. That does not mean that it is the withdrawing of the breath. That is just one way to consider it and to look at it. There may have been a point way back before the 12,000 year mark where there was no life. That is entirely possible, but if that was real, then we were not here, and so it does not matter to us. It does mean that if that is true, then it is entirely possible that there will be a time when there is no life on this planet again, right? That would be the cycle. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that, again, it is going to be a shift in epochs. We are now in the age of electricity and information and knowledge, and that's going to go away at some point. I believe that we are not imminent, because it is not, in my estimation, going to be tomorrow, but rather imminent in that I believe it will be in the next 40 years. I do not necessarily believe that I will make it out, but I hope I do. But if I don't, I hope to pass on as much information prior to the event so that after the event we can get a better start than trying to do it through the Bible. All right, that was a long-winded explanation, but that's what we are here for, right? This passage will be explained as far as it is possible in the present work. Though, as it now stands, it contains nothing new to the Orientalist. Its esoteric interpretation may contain a good deal, which has hitherto remained entirely unknown to the Western student. The first illustration being a plain disk. You can see it here. The second one in the archaic symbol shows a point, a disk with a point in it. The first differentiation in the periodical manifestations of the ever-eternal nature, sexless and infinite. This is unnecessary, right? I understand that we want to assign a sex to God, but God does not have a sex. Aditi in that Rig Veda. The point on the disk, or potential space within abstract space, in its third stage, the point is transformed into a diameter, thus the intersecting line in the circle. It now symbolizes a divine immaculate Mother Nature within the all-embracing absolute infinitude. When the diameter line is crossed by a vertical one, see the vertical line, it becomes the mundane cross. Humanity has reached its third root race. It is the sign for the common origin of human life to begin. When the circumference disappears and leaves only the plus, the Tao, it is a sign that the fall of man into matter is accomplished, and the fourth race begins. The cross within the circle symbolizes pure pantheism. For when the cross was left uninscribed, it became phallic. It had the same and yet other meanings as a Tao inscribed within a circle. See this? Again, y'all can see the circle. Or as a Thor's hammer. The Jaina cross, so-called, or simply swastika, within a circle. That would be a swastika within a circle, which, by the way, precedes Nazism by thousands of years. Now, I'm going to have a slightly different interpretation of these things, right? If you were unaware of the theory of spiritual evolution, this is a fairly good representative of it for me, right? The first is going to be here, that is simply existing with no correlation. That is the atomic existence, right? The individual atom does exist. It vibrates, it serves a purpose, it is harmonious within its function, and it is striving to be the best atom that it can be. When it is attached with other things, it becomes compounds, and those compounds can evolve into further life. That would be the second phase of existence, which is the land of plants and animals, or plants. They assimilate the atoms, but they only grow in one direction, right? Up. They grow out a little bit, right? They have a little bit of width, but they cannot move. They can't go over there. The next space is going to be the ability to move. That is going to be the simple animals. That is the third plane of existence, or 3D reality. You can grow up, you can grow out, and you can move over there. The fourth phase of it is going to be the realm of thought. You are able to grow, to move over there into simple thoughts, right? This is the greater animals. The lesser animals being those that act upon merely instinctual levels and cannot be trained, whereas the greater animals can. Dogs, horses, the various other animals that we teach to do things. They can anticipate slightly, right? My dogs know when it is time to go on their walk. They know when it is time for them to receive their food. Even if they're not hungry, they know that this time is here. That is a small measure of thought, but they can't think, am I going to have something to eat in 3 days? That is not in their conception. They don't have time. That would be us. We're in the fifth plane of existence, and that is going to be unbounded, right? We get to grow up, we grow out, we get to move, we get to think, and we get to plan. We get to say, you know what, winter is coming. Let us store up some food for the winter, or let us see how the mechanics of this particular thing works. Next up is going to be the sixth plane of existence, which is going to be a greater conception of either time or thought, right? I am not 100% sure on which one of those it's going to be. I am more inclined towards time than thought, because most people have the conceptualization of this as the elemental plane, right? This is where the salamanders are, and the various things that we have talked about in the Esoterica playlist that I have not associated with, right? I have not had any interaction with any of the sixth level beings. I don't go to them and ask advice in resolving a situation. I take that directly to source. I don't ask for the intervention of any elementals. But this is also the area of disincorporated beings. They have an existence in time, but not really in thought. That is my thinkings on it. It is more about the mastery of time, where it is more of a fluid than it is a firm, right? For us, there is no going back. We have memories, but that is it. It is entirely possible that in the sixth plane of existence, you can go backwards and forwards in time as necessity, as the necessity arises. The seventh plane of existence is going to be the plane of intervention. That is going to be the entities such as angels and demons, or aliens, or whatever you want to call them. They have a greater functionality in both time and thought. They have the ability to understand over scale things that we do not. They are here to guide in some cases and to tempt in others. There are positive and negative entities, some for the betterment of humanity and some for the detriment of humanity. That is what makes it so difficult to deal with those things. But that would be symbolized here. That would be the movement in space and thought. And then the eighth one is going to be the return to divinity, which is back to the original source. So By the third symbol, the circle divided in two by the horizontal line of the diameter, the first manifestation of creative, still passive because feminine, nature was meant. The first shadowy perception of man connected with procreation is feminine, because man knows his mother more than his father. Hence, female deities were more sacred than the male. Nature is therefore feminine, man to a degree, objective and tangible, and the spirit principle which fructifies it is concealed. The law of gender states that everything is both masculine and feminine, regardless of whether one is dominant or not, right? In me, the masculine energy is more dominant. That is both intentional and unintentional, but I do have feminine elements, right? I do have nurture, I do have creative. There is the positive, penetrative male force, which is signified by white, and there is the feminine, receptive, negative force, which is symbolized by black. Both of those is intrinsic to existence. Doesn't matter what existence, whether it's this cup of tea or whether it is me, it has both the ability to receive and to give. Both. That is an important part to remember as we are talking about these things. Nature is not therefore feminine. It is therefore dominantly feminine, but not necessarily feminine entirely. And that is not, she is saying kind of the same thing, but not exactly the same thing. So I wanted to clarify it. And again, this entirety is an exercise in mental gymnastics because most of it is not going to be known. By adding to the circle with a horizontal line in it, a perpendicular line, the Tao, was formed. This T, the oldest form of the letter. It was the glyph of the third root race to the day of its symbolical fall. An example, when the separation of sexes by natural evolution took place. And see, I don't believe that this is a thing either. I do not believe in the androgyne, right? I believe that everything contains masculine and feminine, but I believe that we are created. I do not believe that it was random chance that brought us here. Microevolution is a thing, but macroevolution does not work. There is variation within the species, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of proof of variation into the new species. We don't have those missing links that brought us from an ape to here. Some of that may just be because we haven't found them, but I don't believe they exist. I believe that there was a point, if we are descended from the simians, where that was intentionally done, whether that was by the entities upon direction of the Creator or through the express direct will of the Creator in its entirety. I lean more towards being created by Creator, but it is entirely possible that there was some intervention by some entities who created us. Again, that is something that we will probably never know, but it's a fun thought exercise, but it is not intrinsically important to any of the things that we are discussing with importance. When the figure became the circle, or sexless life, modified or separated, a double glyph or symbol. With the races of our fifth race, it became in symbology the sacre and the Hebrew nakabava of the first formed races. Then it changed into the Egyptian emblem of life, and still later into the sign of Venus. Then comes the swastika, Thor's hammer, or the Hermetic cross now, entirely separated from its circle, thus becoming purely phallic. The esoteric symbol of Kali Yuga is the five-pointed star reversed, the upside-down pentagram, the sign of human sorcery, with its 2 points, horns, turned heavenward, a position every occultist will recognize as one of the left hand and used in ceremonial magic. We're going to pause here. I have a different explanation for the left-handed path. And in order to illustrate that, we will go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these. They've been up there for a while, and I've got them wrote down elsewhere, so. All right. So, according to me, there are, let's see if y'all can see this. Not really. Let's see if I got a black one. I don't know where all my markers are.
I'm going to have to cut this. Oh well.
Oh well, we'll just do it with blue whether you can see it or not. Maybe green will show it better. Let's see. If we make the triangle, yeah, okay, y'all can see that. And then we make the downward triangle, and we come up with the Star of David, right? Now, I believe that this symbolizes the human chakras. It begins with the base, or with, this is the heart. All right, so this is the heart, this is the base, this is the sacral, this is the solar plexus, this is the, actually, this is the throat, this is the third eye, and this is the crown. Those are separated in that particular order for a particular reason. Now, you have 7 internal chakras and 1 external chakra. The heart being the center that holds together the above with the below and creates the divine, which is the 8th, all-encompassing. So, in the 6-pointed star, you have 8 points. 1 in the middle, 1 at the top and the bottom, 2 on the left, 2 on the right. The 2 on the left-handed side are the 2 that you use to enact magic. Here's how that mechanics work. You begin with the base and you pull in the dark, feminine, receptive energies, and you route that up, well, up this way, through the sacral. Right? The base is the reception. The sacral is directional. So this is where you decide you want it to go in this direction. And then you route it over to the right-handed side, which is an amplification device, right? The sacral decides which direction you want to generate the creation in, and the sacral acts as a nourishment area for that. And then you route these 3 into the heart. You receive the white, male, penetrative, creative energy, and you route that down from the crown here. You route that down into your third eye, which is on the left-hand side. And again, that is directive. You are seeing forward the way that you want things to go, and you are creating from the energy what you want to happen. You then route that over to your throat, which is an amplification device. You create the reality which you want to exist by your voice in the exact same way that we envision Creator doing so. And then you route that again into the heart. The heart binds together the as above with the so below, and through the heart you project that out into the divine, which is the encompassing. That is how manifestation works. You set your intention at the top and the bottom with the receptive and the penetrative energies, and you move it through these various points. The 2 on the left, being the directional, are the left-handed path. The 2 on the right, being amplification, is the right-handed path. Without the left-handed path, there is no manifestation possible. So, let me pull this up. I should have done this so you could see it better, right? I was looking at the wrong screen, but you can see here the bottom, the 2, and the top. This is a Star of David, and it is representative of the 8 chakras. That, to me, is how I have effected change in my life. By moving these energies in this specific pattern, I have been able to heal myself from a couple of different ailments. That is to differentiate it from the pentagram. As far as I am aware, there is no real reason to use a pentagram instead of the Star of David or Metatron's cube, whichever way you prefer to look at it. So, this side of human sorcery, to me, is incorrect. There is no need for it. I do not understand the mechanics that would be 5 instead of 8. It just doesn't work. And even considering that that would be 7 and not 5, because you have the middle point and the encompassing point, you are still missing something. So to me, the left hand is something different than what they have. That is because it has been effective for me. This is not something I am just speculating about. It is something that I have put into practical application. Now, let's check out this footnote. We are told by the Western mathematicians and some American Kabbalists that in the Kabbalah, also, the value of the Jehovah name is that of the diameter of a circle. Add to this the fact that Jehovah is the third Sephiroth, Bina, a feminine word, and you have the key to the mystery. By certain Kabbalistic transformations, this name, androgynous, in the first chapters of Genesis, become, in its transformations, entirely masculine, Cainite, and phallic. The fact of choosing a deity among the pagan gods and making of it a special national god, to call upon it as the one living God, the God of gods, and then proclaim this worship monotheistic, does not change it into one principle, whose unity admits not of multiplication, change, or form, especially in the case of a priapic deity, as Jehovah now demonstrated to be. It is hoped that during the perusal of this work, the erroneous ideas of the public in general with regard to pantheism will be modified. It is wrong and unjust to regard the Buddhist and Advaiti occultists as atheists. If not all of them philosophers, they are, at any rate, all logicians, their objections and arguments being based on strict reasoning. Indeed, if the Parabrahman of the Hindus may be taken as a representative of the hidden and nameless deities of other nations, this absolute principle will be found to be the prototype from which all the others were copied. Parabrahm is not God because it is not a God. It is that which is supreme and not supreme. Paravara explains Mandukya Upanishad 2.28. It is supreme as cause, not supreme as effect. Parabrahm is simply, as a secondless reality, the all-inclusive cosmos, or rather, the infinite cosmic space, in the highest spiritual sense, of course. Brahma, neuter, may be the unchanging, pure, free, undecaying supreme root. The one true existence, Paramarthika, and the absolute Chit and Chayatana, intelligence, consciousness, cannot be a cognizer, for that can have no subject of cognition. Can the flame be called the essence of fire? This essence is the life and light of the universe, the visible flame. Fire and flame are destruction, death, and evil. Fire and flame destroy the body of Arnat. Their essence makes him immortal. Bodhimur, Book 2. The knowledge of the Absolute Spirit, like the effulgence of the sun, or like the heat and fire, is naught else than the Absolute Essence itself, says Sankaracharya. It is the spirit of the fire, not fire itself. Therefore, the attributes of the latter, heat or flame, are not the attributes of the spirit, but of that which spirit is the unconscious cause. It is not the above sentence the true keynote of later Rosicrucian philosophy. Parabrahm is, in short, the collective aggregate of cosmos in its infinity and eternity, the that and this, to which distributive aggregates cannot be applied. Let's see that footnote. See Vedanta Sara by Major G.A. Jacob, also The Aphorisms of Sandalayak, translated by Cowell, page 42. All right, I should have made a note of that. That was here. In the beginning, this was the self, one only. Ataraya Upanishad, the great Sankaracharya, explains that this referred to the universe, Jagat. The sense of the words in the beginning, meaning before the reproduction of the phenomenal universe. Therefore, when the pantheists echo the Upanishads, which state, as in the secret doctrine, that this cannot create, they do not deny a creator, or rather a collective aggregate of creators, but only refuse, very logically, to attribute creation, and especially formation, something finite to an infinite principle. With them, Parabrahman is a passive because an absolute cause, the unconditioned mukta. It is only limited omniscience and omnipotence that are refused to the latter, because these are still attributes as reflected in man's perceptions, and because Parabrahm, being the supreme all, the ever-invisible spirit and soul of nature, changeless and eternal, can have no attributes. Absoluteness very naturally precluding the idea of finite or conditioned from being connected with it. And if the Vedantin postulates attributes as belonging simply to its emanation, calling it Iswara plus Maya, and avidya, agnosticism, and nescience, rather than ignorance, it is difficult to find atheism in this conception. Nevertheless, prejudiced and rather fanatical Christian Orientalists would like to prove this pure atheism. For proof of this, see about Major Jacob's Vedanta Sara. Yet the whole antiquity echoes this Vedantic thought. Omnis emnum per se divum natura nascet esse, immortale evo summa cum passe fratur. Since there can be neither two infinities nor two absolutes in a universe supposed to be boundless, this self-existence can hardly be conceived of as creating personally. In the sense and perceptions of finite beings, that is non-being, in the sense that it is the beingness. For, in this, all lies concealed as co-eternal and co-eval emanation, or inherent radiation, which, upon becoming periodically Brahma, the male-female potency, becomes or expands itself into the manifested universe. Narayana, moving on the abstract waters of space, is transformed into the waters of concrete substance moved by him, who now becomes the manifested Word, or Logos. The Orthodox Brahmins, those who rise the most against the pantheist and Advaitis, calling them atheists, are forced, if Manu has any authority in this matter, to accept the death of Brahma, the creator, at the expiration of every age of this creative deity. 100 divine years, a period which in our years requires 15 figures to express it. And again, that is something that we will not have a firm fix on. That is something that people have supposed, and fine. Yet no philosopher among them will view this death in any other sense than as a temporary disappearance from the manifested plane of existence, or as a periodical rest. I don't believe that there is a rest, right? It may be something like we may be transmuted into another form, and we are not here as humans, but I believe that the soul is here for an experience, whether that is the experience is in this corporeal being or another one. The occultists are, therefore, at one with the Advaita Vedantin philosophers as to the above tenet. They show the impossibility of accepting on philosophical grounds the idea of the absolute all creating, or even evolving, the golden egg, into which it is said to enter in order to transform itself into Brahma, the creator, who expands himself later into gods and all the visible universe. They say that absolute unity cannot pass to infinity, for infinity presupposes the limitless extension of something, and the duration of that something. And the one all is like space, which is its only mental and physical representation on this earth or our plane of existence, neither an object of nor a subject to perception. If one could suppose the eternal infinite all, the omnipresent unity, instead of being in eternity, becoming, through periodical manifestation, a manifold universe or a multiple personality, that unity would cease to be one. Locke's idea that pure space is capable of neither resistance nor motion is incorrect. Space is neither a limitless void nor a conditioned fullness, but both, being, on the plane of the absolute abstraction, the ever incognizable deity, which is void only to finite minds. The footnote says, the very names of the two chief deities, Brahman and Vishnu, ought to have long ago suggested their esoteric meanings. For the root of one, Brahmam, or Brahm, is derived from by some from the word Bri, to grow or to expand. See Kolkata Review. Of the other, Vishnu, from the root Vis, to pervade, to enter in the nature of the essence. Brahma Vishnu, being this infinite space, of which the gods, the rishis, the manus, and all in this universe are simply the potencies, Vibhutaya. Locke's idea, we're here. And on that of Mayavic perception, the plenum, the absolute container of all that is, whether manifested or unmanifested. It is, therefore, that absolute all. There is no difference between the Christian apostles, in him we live and move and have our being, and the Hindu rishis. The universe lives in, proceeds from, and will return to Brahma. For Brahma, neuter, the unmanifested, is that universe in abscontio, and Brahma, the manifested, is the logos, made male-female. And we're going to check out that footnote. See Manu's account of Brahma separating his body into male and female, the latter the female Vak, in whom he creates Viraj, and compare this with the esotericism of chapters 2, 3, and 4 of Genesis. In the symbolical orthodox dogmas, the god of the apostle initiate and of the rishi being both the unseen and the visible space. Space is called in the esoteric symbolism the seven-skinned eternal mother-father. It is composed from its undifferentiated to its differentiated surface of 7 layers. How many planes of existence do we have? Okay. There are 8, but the 8th is the eternal, right? So there are 7 differentiations outside of that. What is that which was, is, and will be? Whether there is a universe or not, whether there be gods or none? Asked the esoteric Sinzar Catechism. And the answer made is space. Is not the one unknown, ever-present God in nature, or nature in abscontio, that is rejected, but the God of human dogma and his humanized word. In his infinite conceit and inherent pride and vanity, man shaped it himself with his sacrilegious hand out of the material he found in his own small brain fabric, and forced it upon mankind as a direct revelation from the one unrevealed space. Checking out the footnote, occultism is indeed in the air at the close of our century. Among many other works recently published, we would recommend one especially to students of theoretical occultism who would not venture beyond the realms of our special human plane. It is called New Aspects of Life and Religion by Henry Pratt, M.D. It is full of esoteric dogmas and philosophy, the latter rather limited, in the concluding chapters by what seems to be a spirit of conditioned positivism. Nevertheless, what is said of space as the unknown first cause merits quotation. This unknown something, thus recognized as and identified with the primary embodiment of simple unity, is invisible and impalpable. Abstract space, granted. And because invisible and impalpable, therefore incognizable, and this incognizability has led to the error of supposing it to be a simple void, a mere receptive capacity. But even viewed as an absolute void, space must be admitted to be either self-existent, infinite, and eternal, or to have had a first cause outside, behind, and beyond itself. The occultist accepts revelation as coming from divine, yet still finite beings, the manifested lives, never from the unmanifestable one life. From those entities called primordial man, Dhyana Buddhas, or Dhyan Kohans, the Rishi Prajapati of the Hindus, the Elohim, or sons of God, the planetary spirits of all nations who have become gods for men. He also regards the Adi Sakti, the direct emanations of Mula Prakriti, the eternal root of that, and the female aspect of the creative cause, Brahma, in her akasic form of the universal soul, as philosophically a Maya, and cause of human Maya. But this view does not prevent him from believing in its existence so long as it lasts, to wit, for one Mahamantara, nor from applying Akasa, the radiation of Mula Prakriti, to practical purposes, connected as the world soul is with the natural phenomena known or unknown to science. And the footnote: in contradistinction to the manifested universe of matter, the term Mula Prakriti, from Mula, the root, and Prakriti, nature, or the unmanifested primordial matter, called by Western alchemists atoms, earth, is applied by the Vedantins to Para Brahman. Matter is dual in religious metaphysics and septenary in esoteric teachings, like everything else in the universe. As Mula Prakriti, it is undifferentiated and eternal. As Vyakata, it becomes differentiated and conditioned, according to Svatara Upanishad 1.8 and Devi Bhagavata Purana. The author of the 4 lectures on the Bhagavad Gita says, in speaking of Mula Prakriti, from its, the Logos's, objective standpoint, Para Brahman appeals to it as Mula Prakriti. Of course, this Mula Prakriti is material to it, as any material object is material to us. Para Brahman is an unconditioned and absolute reality, and Mula Prakriti is a sort of veil thrown over it. Theosophist, Volume 8, page 304. The oldest religions of the world, exoterically, for the esoteric root or foundation is one, are the Indian, the Mazdaean, and the Egyptian. Then comes the Chaldean. The outcome of these, entirely lost to the world now, except in disfigured Sabianism, as at present rendered by the archaeologists. Then, passing over a number of religions that will be mentioned later, comes the Jewish, esoterically as the Kabbalah, following in the line of Babylonian magism, exoterically as in Genesis and the Pentateuch, a collection of allegorical legends. Read by the light of the Zohar, the initial 4 chapters of Genesis are the fragment of highly philosophical page in the world's cosmogony. See Book 2, Gupta Vidya and the Zohar. Left in their symbolical disguise, they are a nursery tale, an ugly thorn in the side of science and logic, an evident effect of karma. To have let them serve as a prologue to Christianity was a cruel revenge on the part of the rabbis, who knew better what their Pentateuch meant. It was a silent protest against their spoliation, and the Jews have certainly now the better of their traditional persecutors. The above-named exoteric creeds will be explained in the light of the universal doctrine as we proceed with it. The occult catechism contains the following questions and answers. What is it that ever is? Space, the eternal Anupakraka. What is it that ever was? The germ and the root. What is it that is ever coming and going? The great breath. Then there are three eternals. No, the three are one. That which ever is one. That which ever was is one. That which is ever being and becoming is also one. And this is space. The first law of creation, all things are one. Explain, O Lanu, disciple. The one is an unbroken circle, ring, with no circumference, for it is nowhere and everywhere. The one is the boundless plane of the circle, manifesting a diameter only during the manvantaric periods. The one is the indivisible point, found nowhere, perceived everywhere during those periods. It is the vertical and the horizontal, the father and the mother, the summit and base of the father, the two extremities of the mother, reaching in reality nowhere, for the one is the ring, as also the rings that are within that ring. Light and darkness and light, the breath which is eternal. It proceeds from without inwardly, and when it is everywhere, and from within outwardly, when it is nowhere. The law of, The law of genders. An example, Maya, one of the centers. All right, so that is going to be there's going to be two different footnotes. So the first one is esoteric philosophy regarding the Maya, or the illusion of ignorance. Every finite thing must necessarily view in the same light every intracosmic planet and body as being something organized, hence finite. The expression, therefore, it proceeds from without inwardly, etc., refers in the first portion of the sentence to the dawn of the Mahamanavantaric period, or the great re-evolution, after one of the complete periodical dissolutions of every compound form in nature, from planet to molecule, to its ultimate essence or element, and, in its second portion, to the partial or local Manvantara, which may be a solar or even a planetary one. The second footnote, by center, a center of energy or a cosmic focus is meant when the so-called creation or formation of a planet is accomplished by that force which is designated by the occultist life and by science energy. Then the process takes place from within outwardly, every atom being said to contain in itself creative energy of the divine breath. Hence, whereas after an absolute pralaya, or when the pre-existing material consists of but one element, and breath is everywhere, the latter acts from without inwardly. After a minor pralaya, everything having remained in statu quo, in a refrigerated state, so to say, like the moon. At the first flutter of Manvantara, the planet or planets begin their resurrection to life from within outwardly. All right, and we are here. It expands and contracts, exhalation and inhalation. When it expands, the mother diffuses and scatters. When it contracts, the mother draws back and ingathers. This produces the periods of evolution and dissolution, Manvantara and Pralaya. The germ is invisible and fiery. The root, the plane of the circle, is cool. But during evolution and Manvantara, her garment is cold and radiant. Hot breath is the father who devours the progeny of the many-faced element, heterogeneous, and leaves the single-faced ones, homogeneous. Cold breath is the mother who conceives forms, brings forth and receives them back into her bosom, to reform them at the dawn of the day of Brahma or Manvantara. For clearer understanding on the part of the general reader, it must be stated that occult science recognizes 7 cosmical elements, 4 entirely physical, and the 5th, ether, semi-material, as it will become visible in the air towards the end of the 4th round, to reign supreme over the others during the whole of the 5th. The remaining 2 are, as yet, absolutely beyond the range of human perception. We have up to 5. We do not have 6 and 7. These latter will, however, appear as presentiments during the 6th and 7th races of this round, and will become known in the 6th and 7th rounds, respectively. Alright, let's check out this footnote. It is curious to notice how, in the evolutionary cycles of ideas, ancient thought seems to be reflected in modern speculation. Had Mr. Herbert Spencer read and studied ancient Hindu philosophers when he wrote a certain passage in his First Principles, page 482, or is it an independent flash of inner perception that made him say half correctly, half incorrectly? Motion, as well as matter being fixed in quantity, it would seem that the change in the distribution of matter which motion affects coming to a limit in whichever direction it is carried. The indestructible motion thereupon necessitates a reverse distribution. Apparently, the universally coexistent forces of attraction and repulsion, which, as we have seen, necessitate rhythm in all the minor changes throughout the universe, also necessitate rhythm in the totality of its changes, produce now an immeasurable period during which the attracting forces predominating cause universal concentration, and then an immeasurable period during which the repulsive forces predominating cause universal diffusion, alternate eras of evolution and dissolution. These 7 elements, with their numberless sub-elements, far more numerous than those known to science, are simply conditional modifications and aspects of the one and only element. This latter is not ether. We're going to go ahead and check out the ether footnote. Whatever the views of the physical science upon the subject, occult science has been teaching for ages that akasa, of which ether is the grossest form, the 5th universal cosmic principle, to which corresponds and from which proceeds human manas, is cosmically a radiant, cool, diatheramous plastic matter, creative in its physical nature, correlative in its grossest aspects and portions, immutable in its higher principles. In the former condition it is called the subroot, and in conjunction with the radiant heat, it recalls dead worlds to life. In its higher aspect, it is the soul of the world. In its lower, the destroyer. That is going to be the Holy Spirit. Now, if you are unfamiliar, I have the Trinity, right? We hit it in the introduction, but let's hit it now. There is the body, which you use to navigate 5D space, the temple of God. There is the soul, which is the individualized piece of God that is you making the decisions for the temple. And the last piece is going to be the Holy Spirit, which is literally every element ever in existence. We hit that briefly at the beginning. You can manipulate the Holy Spirit. That is the manna, the manna. That is the ether. That is the plasma. That is the electromagnetic forces of creation. That is the part that is eternally in motion. That is the part that brings the returns. That is the part that turns now into next. It is the part that turns your food into fuel. It is the part that turns your breath into circulation. It is the part that when you, the soul, decide to wiggle your fingers, actually makes your fingers move. It is electrical impulses that makes that happen. Those electrical impulses are the Holy Spirit. The powers of manifestation that we talked about on this board is you moving that power through those different points into the divine point in order to manifest what you desire. That is the ether. Back to the text. Not even akasa, but the source of these. The 5th element, now advocated quite freely by science, is not the ether hypothesized by Sir Isaac Newton, although he calls it by that name, having associated it in his mind probably with the aether, father-mother of antiquity. As Newton intuitionally says, nature is a perpetual circulatory worker, generating fluids out of solids, fixed things out of volatile, and volatile out of fixed, subtile out of growth, and gross out of subtile. Thus, perhaps, may all things be originated from ether. The reader has to bear in mind that the stanzas given treat only of the cosmogony of our own planetary system and what is visible around it, after a solar pralaya. The secret teachings with regard to the evolution of the universal cosmos cannot be given, since they could not be understood by the highest minds in this age, and there seem to be very few initiates, even among the greatest, who are allowed to speculate upon the subject. Moreover, the teachers say openly that not even the highest Dhyanakoans have ever penetrated the mysteries beyond those boundaries that separate the milliards of solar systems from the central sun, as it is called. Therefore, that which is given relates only to our visible cosmos, after a Naita Brahma. Before the reader proceeds to the consideration of the stanzas from the Book of Dizan, which form the basis of the present work, it is absolutely necessary that he should be made acquainted with the few fundamental conceptions which underlie and pervade the entire system of thought to which his attention is invited. These basic ideas are few in number, and on their clear apprehension depends the understanding of all that follows. Therefore, no apology is required for asking the reader to make himself familiar with them first, before entering on the perusal of the work itself. It is good that this is going to be involved in here. I had asked to be reminded of that, but I don't know if we will have to go through a work of the Book of Dizan if it is what is going to be covered in this book. The Secret Doctrine establishes three fundamental propositions. A. An omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible. That's why I said that it is a fun exercise to do these ruminations, but we will not know, right? Speculation is impossible. You will not know the eternal. It's not going to happen. You can make assumptions about it. You can speculate upon it, but you will not know until it is time to return. Since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude, it is beyond the range and reach of thought. In the words of Mandukya, unthinkable and unspeakable. To render these ideas clearer to the general reader, let him set out with the postulate that there is one absolute reality which antecedes all manifested, conditioned being. This infinite and eternal cause, dimly formulated in the unconscious and unknowable of current European philosophy. It is the rootless root of all that was, is, or ever shall be. It is, of course, devoid of all attributes, and is essentially without any relation to manifested finite being. It is beingness rather than being, in Sanskrit, sat, and is beyond all thought or speculation. This beingness is symbolized in the Secret Doctrine under two aspects. On the one hand, absolute, abstract space, representing bare subjectivity, the one thing which no human mind can either exclude from any conception or conceive of by itself. On the other, absolute, abstract motion, representing unconditioned consciousness. Even our Western thinkers have shown that consciousness is inconceivable to us apart from change, and motion best symbolizes change, its essential characteristic. This latter aspect of the one reality is also symbolized by the term the great breath, a symbol sufficiently graphic to need no further elucidation. Thus, then, the first fundamental axiom of the Secret Doctrine is this metaphysical one absolute beingness, symbolized by finite intelligence as the theological Trinity. We dealt with the Trinity already. It may, however, assist the student if a few further explanations are given here. Herbert Spencer has of late so far modified his agnosticism as to assert that the nature of the first cause, let's check out the footnote, the first presupposes necessarily something which is the first brought forth the first in time, space, and rank, and therefore finite and conditioned. The first cannot be the absolute, for it is manifestation. Therefore, Eastern occultism calls the abstract all the causeless one cause, the rootless root, and limits the first cause to the logos in the sense that Plato gives to this term. Where are we at? Right here. Which the occultist more logically derives from the causeless cause. The eternal and the unknowable may be essentially the same as that of the consciousness which wells up within us. In short, the impersonal reality pervading the cosmos is the pure noumenon of thought. This advance, on his part, brings him very near to the esoteric and Vedantin tenet. And that footnote is see Mr. Subaru's 4 able lectures on the Bhagavad Gita, Theosophist, February of 1887. The one reality, the absolute, is the field of absolute consciousness. An example, the essence, which is out of all relation to conditioned existence, and of which conscious existence is a conditioned symbol. But once we pass in thought from this to us, absolute negation, duality supervenes in the contrast of spirit, or consciousness, and matter, subject and object. Spirit, or consciousness, and matter are, however, to be regarded not as independent realities, but as two facets, or aspects, of the absolute, para Brahm, which constitute the basis of conditional being, whether subjective or objective. Considering this metaphysical triad as the root from which proceeds all manifestation, the great breath assumes the character of pre-cosmic ideation. It is the fons et origine of force and of all individual consciousness, and supplies the guiding intelligence in the vast scheme of cosmic evolution. On the other hand, pre-cosmic root substance, mula prakatariti, is the aspect of the absolute which underlies all the objective planes of nature. Just as pre-cosmic ideation is the root of all individual consciousness, so pre-cosmic substance is the substratum of matter in the various grades of its differentiation. Hence, it will be apparent that the contrast of these two aspects of the absolute is essential in the existence of the manifested universe. Apart from cosmic substance, cosmic ideation could not manifest as individual consciousness, since it is only through a vehicle of matter that consciousness wells up as I am I. We're going to check out this footnote for vehicle. Wait, is that 2? Yeah. Okay, so that is going to be called in Sanskrit upadhi. A physical basis being necessary to focus a ray of a universal mind at a certain stage of complexity. Again, apart from cosmic ideation, cosmic substance would remain an empty abstraction, and no emergence of consciousness could ensue. The manifested universe, therefore, is pervaded by duality, which is, as it were, the very essence of its existence as manifestation. But just as the opposite poles of subject and object, spirit and matter, are but aspects of the one unity in which they are synthesized, so, in the manifested universe, there is that which links spirit to matter, subject to object. This something, at present unknown to Western speculation, is called by the occultist Fohat. It is the bridge by which the ideas existing in the divine thought are impressed upon the cosmic substance as the laws of nature. Fohat is thus the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation, or, regarded from the other side, it is the intelligent medium, the guiding power of all manifestation, the thought divine, transmitted and made manifest through the Dahan Kokans, the architects of the invisible world. The footnote says, the absolute, the Parabrahm of the Vedantins, or the one reality, Sat, which is, as Hegel says, both absolute being and non-being. Thus, from spirit or cosmic ideation comes our consciousness. from cosmic substance the several vehicles in which that consciousness is individualized and attains to self, or reflective, consciousness, while Fohat, in its various manifestations, is the mysterious link between mind and matter, the animating principle electrifying every atom into life, the Holy Spirit. The following summary will afford a clearer idea to the reader. Oh wait, I did not go to the footnote. That's fine. 1. The absolute, the para-Brahman of the Vedantins, or the one reality Sat, which is, as Hegel says, both absolute being and non-being. I read that in place of the footnote. 2. The first manifestation, the impersonal, and, in philosophy, unmanifested Logos, the precursor of the manifested. This is the first cause, the unconscious of European pantheists. 3. Spirit matter, life, the spirit of the universe, the Purusha and Prakriti, or the second Logos. Cosmic ideation, Mahat, or intelligence, the universal world soul, the cosmic noumenon of matter, the basis of the intelligent operations in and of nature, also called Maha-Buddhi. The one reality, its dual aspects in the conditioned universe. Further, the secret doctrine affirms. B. The eternity of the universe in toto, as a boundless plane, periodically, the playground of numberless universes incessantly manifesting and disappearing, called the manifesting stars, and the sparks of eternity, the eternity of the pilgrim. Pilgrim is the appellation given to our monad, the two-in-one, during its cycle of incarnations. It is the only immortal and eternal principle in us, being an indivisible part of the integral whole. The universal spirit, from which it emanates and into which it is absorbed at the end of the cycle. That's going to be the soul. When it is said to emanate from the one spirit, an awkward and incorrect expression has to be used, for a lack of appropriate words in English. The Vedantins call it Sutratma, thread soul, but their explanation too differs somewhat from that of the occultist. To explain the difference, however, is left to the Vedantins themselves. Alright, where are we at? The eternity of the pilgrim is like a wink of the eye of self-existence, Book of Dizan. The appearance and disappearance of worlds is like a regular tidal ebb of flux and reflux. See Part 2, Days and Nights of Brahma. This second assertion of the secret doctrine is the absolute universality of that law of periodicity, or flux and reflux, ebb and flow, the law of rhythms, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature. An alternation, such as that of day and night, life and death, sleeping and waking, is a fact so common, so perfectly universal and without exception, that it is easy to comprehend that in it we see one of the absolutely fundamental laws of the universe. Moreover, the secret doctrine teaches C. The fundamental identity of all souls with the universal over soul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root, and the obligatory pilgrimage for every soul, a spark of the former, through the cycle of incarnation or necessity, in accordance with cyclic and karmic law during the whole term. In other words, no purely spiritual buddhi, divine soul, can have an independent conscious existence before the spark which issued from the pure essence of the universal sixth principle, or the oversoul, has A. Passed through every elemental form of the phenomenal world of that Manvantara, and B. Acquired individuality, first by natural impulse, and then by self-induced and self-devised efforts, checked by its karma, thus ascending through all the degrees of intelligence, from the lowest to the highest manas, from mineral and plant up to the holiest archangel. See before the 7 planes of existence. Or 8. Right, I say 7, but it is really 8 because it includes the divine source from which we come and which we return. Thus, up to the holiest archangel, Dhyana Buddhi. The pivotal doctrine of the esoteric philosophy admits no privileges or special gifts in man, save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit throughout a long series of metempsychoses and reincarnations. This is why the Hindus say that the universe is Brahma and Brahma, for Brahma is every atom of the universe, the six principles in nature being all the outcome, the variously differentiated aspects of the seventh and one, the only reality in the universe, whether cosmical or microcosmical, and also why the permutations, psychic, spiritual, and physical, on the plane of manifestation and form of the sixth, Brahma, the vehicle of Brahma, are viewed by metaphysical antiphrases as elusive and maivic. For although the root of every atom individually and of every form collectively is that seventh principle, or the one reality that's in actuality the eighth, still in its manifested phenomenal and temporary appearance, it is no better than an evanescent illusion to our senses. For clearer definition, addendum, gods, monads, and atoms, and also theophania, bodhisattvas, and reincarnation, etc., etc. In its absoluteness, the one principle, under its two aspects of Parabrahman and Mula Prakriti, is sexless, unconditioned, and eternal. Its periodical, manvantaric emanation, or primal radiation, is also one, androgynous and phenomenally finite. When the radiation radiates in its turn, all its radiations are also androgynous, to become male and female principles in the lower aspects. After pralaya, whether the great or minor pralaya, the latter leaving the world in status quo, the first that reawakes to active life is the plastic akasa, father-mother, the spirit and soul of ether, or the plane on the surface of the circle. Space is called the mother before its cosmic activity, and father-mother at the first stage of reawakening. See comments, stanza 2. In the Kabbalah, it is also father, mother, son. But whereas in the Eastern doctrine, these are the seventh principle of the manifested universe, or its Atma Buddhi Manas, spirit, soul, intelligence, the triad branching off and dividing into these seven cosmical and seven human principles. In the Western Kabbalah of the Christian mystics, it is the triad, or Trinity, and with their occultist, the male-female Jehovah, Yahweh. In this lies the whole difference between the esoteric and the Christian trinities. The mystics and the philosophers, the Eastern and Western pantheists, synthesize their pregenetic triad in the pure divine abstraction. The Orthodox anthropomorphize it. Hiranyagar Baha, Hari, and Sankara, the three hypostases of the manifesting Spirit of the Supreme Spirit, by which title Prithivi, the earth, greets Vishnu, his first avatar, are the purely metaphysical abstract qualities of formation, preservation, and destruction, and are the three divine asvetas, literally hypostases, of that which does not perish with created things. Or Achyuta, a name of Vishnu, whereas the Orthodox Christian separates his personal creative deity into the three personages of the Trinity and admits of no higher deity. The latter, in occultism, is the abstract triangle, with the Orthodox, the perfect cube. The creative God or the aggregate gods are regarded by the Eastern philosopher as Brahmtadar Sanatha, false apprehension, something conceived of by reason of erroneous appearances as a material form, and explained as arising from the elusive conception of the egotistic personal and human soul, lower fifth principle. It is beautifully expressed in a new translation of Vishnu Purana. That Brahma, in its totality, has essentially the aspect of Prakriti, both evolved and unevolved, mula prakriti, and also the aspect of spirit and the aspect of time. Spirit, O twice born, is the leading aspect of the supreme Brahma. Let's go ahead and pull that. Thus, Spencer, who nevertheless, like Schopenhauer and von Hartmann, only reflects an aspect of the old esoteric philosophers, and hence lands his readers on that bleak shore of agnostic despair, reverentially formulates the grand mystery, that which persists unchanging in quantity but ever-changing in form, under these sensible appearances which the universe presents to us, is an unknown and unknowable power, which we are obliged to recognize as without limit in space and without beginning or end in time. It is only daring theology, never science or philosophy, which seeks to gauge the infinite and unveil the fathomless and unknowable. The next is a twofold aspect. Prakriti, both evolved and unevolved, and is the time last. Kronos is shown in the Orphic theogony as being also a generated god or agent. At this stage of the reawakening of the universe, the sacred symbolism represented as a perfect circle with the root point in the center. This sign was universal, therefore we find it in the Kabbalah also. The Western Kabbalah, however, now in the hands of Christian mystics, ignores it altogether, though it is plainly shown in the Zohar. These sectarians begin at the end and show the symbol of pre-genetic cosmos, this sign, which is shown, calling it the union of the rose and the cross, the great mystery of occult generation, from whence the name Rosicrucians, Rose Cross. As may be judged, however, from the most important, as the best known of the Rosicrucian symbols, there is one which has never been hitherto understood even by modern mystics. It is that of the pelican, tearing open its breast to feed its 7 little ones. I got you. The real creed of the Brothers of the Rosy Cross, and a direct outcome from the Eastern secret doctrine. Brahma, neuter, is called Kalansa, meaning, as explained by Western Orientalists, the eternal swan or goose. See stanza 3, comment 8. And so is Brahma, the creator. A mistake is thus brought under notice. It is Brahma, neuter, who ought to be referred to as Hansavahana, he who uses the swan as his vehicle, and not Brahma, the creator, who is the real Kalahansa, while Brahma, neuter, is Hamsa, and a Hamsa, as will be explained in the commentary. Let it be understood that the terms Brahma and Parabrahmam are not used here because they belong to our esoteric nomenclature, but simply because they are more familiar to the students in the West. Both are the perfect equivalents of our 1, 3, and 7 vowel terms, which stand for the one all and the one all in all. I say 1, 3, 8. If you are unfamiliar, that is the number of manifestation. It is 1, which is the one, 3, which is the Trinity, body, soul, and spirit, and 8, which is the 7 internal and the 1 external, or the pelican, right? The 1 external divine encompassing is the pelican in this, or the swan, or the goose, or whatever, right? It is the encompassing of the 7. So when it is ripping open and there are 7 internal, that is this. That is exactly what this is. It is explained right there. And they are stopping at the 7 without taking the goose as being the 8th. That is 138, not 137. It is the one in all. It is the one in all. 138. Such are the basic conceptions on which the secret doctrine rests. It would not be in place here to enter upon any defense or proof of their inherent reasonableness, nor can I pause to show how they are, in fact, contained, though too often under a misleading guise, in every system of thought or philosophy worthy of the name. Once that the reader has gained a clear comprehension of them and realized the light which they throw on every problem of life, they will need no further justification in his eyes, because their truth will be to him as evident as the sun in heaven. I pass on, therefore, to the subject matter of the stanzas as given in this volume, adding a skeleton outline of them, in the hope that thereby rendering the task of the student more easy, by placing before him, in a few words, the general conception therein explained. Stanza 1. The history of cosmic evolution as traced by the stanzas is, so to say, the abstract algebraical formula of that evolution. Hence, the student must not expect to find there an account of all the stages and transformations which intervene between the first beginning of universal evolution and our present state. To give such an account would be as impossible as it would be incomprehensible to men who cannot even grasp the nature of the plane of existence next to that to which, for the moment, their consciousness is limited. The stanzas, therefore, give an abstract formula which can be applied mutatis mutandis to all evolution, to that of our tiny earth, to that of the chain of planets of which the earth forms one, to the solar universe, which that chain belongs, and so on, in an ascending scale, till the mind reels and is exhausted in the effort. The 7 stanzas given in this volume represent these 7 terms of this abstract formula. They refer to and describe the 7 great stages of the evolutionary process, which are spoken of in the Puranas as the 7 creations, and in the Bible as the days of creation. The first stanza describes the state of the one all during pralaya, before the first flutter of reawakening manifestation. A moment's thought shows that such a state can only be symbolized. To describe it is impossible, nor can it be symbolized except in negatives, for, since it is the state of absoluteness per se, it can possess none of those specific attributes which serve us to describe objects in positive terms. Hence, that state can only be suggested by the negatives of all those most abstract attributes which men feel rather than conceive, as the remotest limits attainable by their power of conception. The stage described in stanza 2 is, to a Western mind, so nearly identical with that mentioned in the first stanza, that to express the idea of its difference would require a treatise in itself. Hence it must be left to the intuition and the higher faculties of the reader to grasp, as far as he can, the meaning of the allegorical phrases used. Indeed, it must be remembered that all these stanzas appeal to the inner faculties rather than to the ordinary comprehension of the physical brain. Stanza 3 describes the reawakening of the universe to life after pralaya. It depicts the emergence of the monads from their state of absorption within the one, the earliest and highest stage of the formation of worlds, the term monad being one which may apply equally to the vastest solar system or the tiniest atom. Stanza 4 shows the differentiation of the germ of the universe into the septenary hierarchy of conscious divine powers, who are the active and manifestations of the one supreme energy. Is that where they're getting thought in the fourth? They are the framers, shapers, and ultimately the creators of all the manifested universe, in the only sense in which the name creator is intelligible. They inform and guide it. They are the intelligent beings who adjust and control evolution, embodying in themselves those manifestations of the one law, which we know as the laws of nature. Generically, they are known as the Dayan Kohans, though each one of the various groups has its own designation in the secret doctrine. This stage of evolution is spoken of in Hindu mythology as the creation of the gods. In stanza 5, the process of world formation is described. First, diffused cosmic matter, then the fiery whirlwind, the first stage in the formation of a nebula. The nebula condenses and, after passing through various transformations, forms a solar universe, a planetary chain, or a single planet, as the case may be. The subsequent stages in the formation of a world are indicated in stanza 6, which brings the evolution of such a world down to its fourth great period, corresponding to the period in which we are now living. Stanza 7 continues the history, tracing the descent of life down to the appearance of man, and thus closes the first book of the secret doctrine. The development of man, from his first appearance on this earth in this round to the state in which we will now find him, will form the subject of Book 2. Note, the stanzas which form the thesis of every section are given throughout their modern translated version as it would be worse than useless. Okay, so this is continued. Worse than useless to make the subject more difficult by introducing the archaic phraseology of the original with its puzzling style and words. Extracts are given from the Chinese, Tibetan, and Sanskrit translations of the original Sinzar commentaries and glosses on the Book of Dizan, these being now rendered for the first time into a European language. It is almost unnecessary to state that the portions of the seven stanzas are here, that only portions of the seven stanzas are here given. Were they published complete, they would remain incomprehensible to all save the few higher occultists. Nor is there any need to assure the reader that, no more than most of the profane, does the writer, or rather the humble recorder, understand those forbidden passages. We will definitely have to dig into that then. If it's not going to give us the entirety of the book, we're going to have to go back and read the book. Right? If it's not going to deal with all of the concepts, we're going to have to go back and do that. To facilitate the reading and to avoid the too frequent references to footnotes, it was best thought to blend together text and glosses, using the Sanskrit and Tibetan proper names whenever those cannot be avoided, in preference to giving the originals. The more so as the said terms are all accepted synonyms, the former only being used between a master and his Kellas, or disciples. Thus, were one to translate into English, using only the substantives and technical terms as employed in one of the Tibetan and Sinzar versions, verse 1 would read as follows: Tawang and Zigayu slept 7 korlo, Zodmanas zeba, Al nyug bosom, Konch hognot, Tayan kam not, Laya kokan not, Dembrel jogni not, Dharma kaya ceased, the Jingjang not become, Barnang and Sasa in Negovanij alone, Theog Yisen, in night of Sunchan and Yongrub, Paran ish Pana, etc., which would sound like pure abracadabra. As this work is written for the instruction of students of occultism, and not for the benefit of philologists, we may well avoid such foreign terms whenever it is possible to do so. The untranslatable terms alone, incomprehensible unless explained in their meanings, are left, but all such terms are rendered in their Sanskrit form. Needless to remind the reader that these are, in almost every case, the late developments of the later language, and pertain to the fifth root race. Sanskrit, as now known, was not spoken by the Atlanteans, and most of the philosophical terms used in the systems of the India of the post-Mahabharatan period are not found in the Vedas, nor are they to be met within the original stanzas, but only their equivalents. The reader who is not a theosophist is once more invited to regard all of that which follows as a fairy tale, as, if he likes, as at best as one of the yet unproven speculations of dreamers, and, at the worst, as an additional hypothesis to the many scientific hypotheses past, present, and future, some exploded, some still lingering. It is not in any sense worse than are many of the so-called scientific theories, and it is in every case more philosophical and probable. In view of the abundant comments and explanations required, the references to the footnotes are given in the usual way, while the sentences to be commented upon are marked with figures. Additional matter will be found in the chapters on symbolism, forming Part 2, as well as in Part 3, these being often more full of information than the text. And that is going to bring us to the end of Chapter 1. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something that I apologize for. I do have a different understanding of some of the things. I feel, explain those along the way in the way that I need to explain them, and I am sure that there will be better explanations coming forward as we get deeper into these stanzas. The theory of spiritual evolution is mine. It is a speculative thing, but it seems to fit. There are 8 layers to it, beginning and ending with the eternal. The 7 steps, I believe we are on the 5th one, is part of the process. I do not give a whole lot of time to contemplating the before or even the after. I have the understanding that the soul is eternal, right? The part of you that is making the decisions here is eternal. It was somewheres prior to being here. It will be somewheres after we leave here. Where we came from and where we go is of a little bit less importance than the fact that that exists. It could be completely within line of the Christian belief. I do not believe so. It could be completely within the beliefs of the Buddhists. I do not believe so. I believe that even my understanding of it is incomplete. I do not claim to be the final authority, but I do claim to be adding a little bit more light. I do claim to be showing a little bit more understanding. The spiritual evolution was one of those things that was directly revealed to me. The 8 chakras is another one of those things that is directly revealed to me. The fundamental 8-level repeating pattern through history, also something that was directly revealed to me. That can be too much for some people, and I understand that. But if you are this far along, you are seeking the knowledge that I am dispensing. I am giving to you freely, fully, and openly, as best as possible, my understanding of these concepts, which I have used to effect change in my life by this process right here. This is how I did it. Right? All of this is so that I can better explain that. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, sub, throw me a comment. If you agree or disagree with anything that was discussed, leave it down below, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me go through in the manner that we are doing here, drop that in the comments as well. And if you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks, because the bells do not pay themselves. To the crew,
Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take.
Peace.